Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, watching the stars drift past through the massive viewing window. 300 years had passed since humanity first reached the stars, and now they were known throughout the galaxy as the Peacekeepers. The bridge buzzed with quiet activity as humans and aliens worked side by side, a sight that still amazed visitors from other worlds. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from the Vega Prime Station," said Commander Lisa Park, his second in command. Her voice carried the calm confidence that had made her one of the most respected officers in the fleet. "Ambassador Williams has successfully concluded the treaty negotiations." Jake smiled and nodded. Another peaceful solution to what could have been a devastating conflict. The Rigelian Mining Consortium and the Tau Ceti Trade Union had been on the brink of war over mining rights in the asteroid fields. 3 months of careful diplomacy had prevented millions of deaths. "Send our congratulations to the ambassador," Jake said, "and prepare a course for New Geneva Station. The Federation Council will want a full report." The Harmony was humanity's flagship, a massive vessel that served more as a mobile peace conference than a warship. Its halls were filled with meeting rooms, cultural exchange centers, and diplomatic quarters. The ship's weapon systems were minimal, just enough to defend against pirates or asteroid impacts. This was humanity's way among the stars. Trust first, weapons last. Dr. Sam Rodriguez walked onto the bridge carrying a datapad filled with his latest research. As head of the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program, Sam spent his days studying how different species could work together better. His work had helped prevent dozens of conflicts before they could start. "Admiral, I've finished my analysis of the Vega Prime negotiations," Sam said, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. The breakthrough came when Ambassador Williams realized that both species actually wanted the same thing: economic security for their people. Once she framed the discussion around shared prosperity instead of resource competition, the solution became obvious. Jake had seen this pattern many times before. Most conflicts in the galaxy happened because species didn't understand each other. Humans had learned this lesson the hard way during their own violent history on Earth. The great wars of the 21st and 22nd centuries had nearly destroyed their home planet. But from that darkness, humanity had emerged with a deep understanding of the true cost of war. "That's excellent work, Sam," Jake said. "Make sure your report gets distributed to all our diplomatic teams. This approach might work in other negotiations." The elevator doors opened and Captain Bill Hayes stepped onto the bridge. His scout ship, the UES Frontier, had just returned from a patrol of the Outer Rim territories. Bill was one of humanity's best explorers, known for his ability to make peaceful contact with new species. "Admiral, I need to report something unusual," Bill said, his face serious. "We've detected some strange energy signatures coming from beyond the galactic edge. They don't match any known Federation technology." Lisa moved to the sensor station and began analyzing the data. "The patterns are consistent with faster-than-light travel, but the energy output is massive. Whatever's out there is using technology we've never seen before." Jake studied the readings with interest rather than concern. In 3 centuries of space exploration, humanity had encountered hundreds of different species and technologies. Each first contact had been a learning experience, and most had led to peaceful relationships and shared knowledge. "Could be another species looking for a new home," Jake suggested. "We should prepare a first contact team, just in case they enter Federation space." On New Geneva Station, Ambassador Kate Williams was concluding her final meeting with the Vega Prime representatives. At 62 years old, Kate had negotiated more peace treaties than any other human diplomat. Her silver hair and kind eyes had become symbols of hope throughout the galaxy. "The mining rights agreement will benefit both your peoples for generations," Kate told the assembled delegates. "But more importantly, you've shown that former enemies can become partners when they choose cooperation over conflict." The Rigelian delegate, a tall being with blue-scaled skin, bowed deeply. "Ambassador Williams, your people have given the galaxy a great gift. Before humans joined the Federation, we settled disputes with weapons. Now we settle them with words." Kate smiled, but she also felt the weight of responsibility. Humanity's reputation as peacekeepers had taken centuries to build, and it required constant effort to maintain. Every human in space served as an ambassador for their species, showing others that there was always an alternative to violence. Meanwhile, on the university world of Alpha Centauri, Dr. Amy Stone was giving a lecture to a mixed class of human and alien students. As a xenobiologist, Amy studied the incredible diversity of life in the galaxy. Her classroom was filled with beings from a dozen different worlds, all learning about the biology of other species. Life finds a way to exist in every environment, Amy explained, gesturing to holographic displays of various alien life forms. But intelligent life is rare and precious. That's why the Federation's mission is so important. We protect not just worlds and resources, but the unique perspectives and knowledge that each species brings to our community. A young human student raised her hand. Dr. Stone, why are humans so good at diplomacy when our history shows we were once very violent? Amy paused, considering the question carefully. Perhaps because we understand the true cost of violence. We know what it means to lose everything to war. That knowledge makes us work harder to find peaceful solutions. Back on the Harmony, Jake was reviewing reports from across Federation space. Trade was flowing freely between worlds, scientific discoveries were being shared among species, and conflicts were being resolved through negotiation rather than force. The galaxy was more peaceful than it had ever been. Admiral, Lisa said, we're receiving reports of successful diplomatic missions from 12 different sectors this week alone. The Andromedan Accords are holding strong, and even the warrior clans of Sparta Prime are sending students to our diplomatic academy. Jake nodded with satisfaction. This was what humanity had worked toward for 3 centuries, a galaxy where different species could coexist and thrive together. Their own violent past had taught them that war only brought suffering and loss. By choosing a different path among the stars, they had helped create something beautiful. As the Harmony continued its journey through space, its crew didn't know that far beyond the galactic edge, something ancient and hungry was watching them, something that had consumed entire galaxies and was now turning its attention toward their peaceful federation. But for now, the stars were at peace and humanity continued its quiet work of keeping them that way. Captain Bill Hayes was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started blaring throughout the UES frontier. His small scout ship was patrolling the edge of Federation space, where the known galaxy faded into the dark void between star clusters. Lieutenant Amy Stone rushed onto the bridge, her face flushed with excitement. "Captain, you need to see this," Amy said, pointing to the main display screen. "We're picking up massive energy signatures from the void. They're unlike anything in our databases." Bill set down his coffee and moved to the sensor station. The reading showed something huge approaching from the empty space between galaxies. The energy patterns were strange, almost organic in nature, but clearly artificial. Whatever was out there was using technology that humanity had never encountered before. "Distance and speed?" Bill asked, his voice calm despite the unusual situation. "Still about a light year away, but moving fast," reported Tony Clark, the ship's security chief. "At their current speed, they'll reach Federation space in about 6 hours. Bill considered their options. First contact with a new species was always delicate work, but humanity had procedures for these situations. 3 centuries of peaceful diplomacy had taught them how to approach unknown aliens with caution, but without hostility. "Send a standard first contact message on all frequencies," Bill ordered. "Universal mathematical sequences followed by basic language patterns. And get me a direct line to Admiral Morrison." While they waited for a response, Amy continued analyzing the sensor data. What she saw made her gasp in wonder. The approaching ships were enormous, easily 10 times larger than any Federation vessel. Their hulls seemed to be made of some kind of crystalline material that pulsed with internal light. "Captain, I'm reading organic components in their ship design," Amy reported. "It's like they've grown their vessels rather than built them. The technology is incredibly advanced." Hours passed as the alien fleet drew closer. Finally, the communications array crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The voice that came through was melodic and beautiful, speaking in a language that the universal translator struggled to process. "Greetings, small ones," the voice said, though the words seemed to shimmer with additional meanings. "We are the Kethmori, travelers from the far darkness. We seek sanctuary among your bright stars." Bill felt relief wash over him. Refugees seeking shelter was a situation humanity had dealt with many times before. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, and many species had fled their homeworlds due to natural disasters or other catastrophes. "This is Captain Bill Hayes of the United Earth Ship Frontier," he responded. "Welcome to Federation space. We're prepared to offer humanitarian assistance. What kind of help do you need?" The alien ships slowed as they approached, revealing their true magnificence. Amy stared in awe at the crystalline vessels that seemed to capture and reflect starlight in impossible ways. Each ship was a work of art, beautiful beyond description. "We are the last of our kind," the Kethmori representative continued. "Our galaxy died long ago, consumed by darkness. We have traveled for eons seeking a new home where we might rest and rebuild." Tony frowned at his security console. "Captain, I'm not reading any weapons on their ships. In fact, I'm not reading much technology at all beyond their propulsion systems. How did they survive a journey between galaxies?" "Perhaps they're just very different from us," Amy suggested. "Some species develop along paths we can't imagine." Bill opened a channel to Admiral Morrison aboard the Harmony. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen, showing his usual calm composure. "Captain Hayes, report. Admiral, we've made contact with a refugee fleet from outside our galaxy. They call themselves the Kethmori and are requesting sanctuary. They appear to be peaceful and highly advanced." "Understood. I'm dispatching Ambassador Williams to your location immediately. Continue peaceful contact protocols but maintain safe distance until we know more about them." Over the next few days, Ambassador Kate Williams conducted preliminary negotiations with the Kethmori. The aliens proved to be polite and grateful for humanity's offer of help. They spoke of their long journey through the void, describing the death of their home galaxy in poetic terms that the translator could barely convey. Dr. Sam Rodriguez joined the talks remotely, fascinated by Kethmori culture. They claimed to be millions of years old, having achieved a form of collective consciousness that allowed them to survive their galaxy's destruction. Their technology was based on biological processes that seemed almost magical to human observers. "They're incredible," Sam reported to Admiral Morrison. "Their understanding of life and death is completely different from ours. They speak of existence in ways that challenge our basic assumptions about reality." The Federation Council convened an emergency session to discuss the Kethmori request for sanctuary. Representatives from dozens of species gathered virtually to hear Ambassador Williams' report. "The Kethmori appear to be genuine refugees," Kate explained to the assembled delegates. "They're asking for uninhabited worlds where they can establish small colonies. Their technology is so advanced that they require very little in terms of resources." The Council voted unanimously to welcome the Kethmori into Federation space. Plans were quickly made to provide them with several uninhabited worlds in the Centauri cluster, far enough from major population centers to give them privacy, but close enough to provide assistance if needed. Amy was chosen to head the scientific exchange program with the Kethmori. When she first met them in person, she was struck by their ethereal beauty. They appeared as tall, graceful beings made of living crystal, their forms shifting and flowing like liquid light. When they spoke, their voices created harmonics that seemed to resonate in the soul. "Your species is young but wise," the Kethmori elder told Amy during their first meeting. "You have learned to value peace over conquest. This is rare among the young races." "We learned from our mistakes," Amy replied. "War nearly destroyed our world. We chose a different path among the stars." The Kethmori delegation smiled, an expression that looked like light dancing through crystal. "Yes, we can sense the pain in your species' past. Pain often leads to wisdom, if one survives to learn from it." Dr. Rodriguez established cultural exchange centers on 3 different worlds, allowing Federation scientists to study Kethmori technology while sharing human knowledge in return. The aliens were particularly interested in human art and music, claiming that creativity was the highest form of life's expression. Within weeks, the first Kethmori colonies were established. The aliens worked quickly, using their biotechnology to create beautiful cities that seemed to grow from the ground itself. Their structures pulsed with soft light and seemed to breathe like living organisms. Captain Hayes visited one of the new colonies and was amazed by what he saw. The Kethmori had transformed a barren world into a garden paradise in just days. Strange, beautiful plants grew everywhere, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. "How did you accomplish this so quickly?" he asked the colony leader. "We do not build as you do," the Kethmori explained. "We guide life to grow where we need it. All existence is connected, and we simply encourage it to take the forms we require." Back on the Harmony, Admiral Morrison reviewed the positive reports coming in from all the Kethmori settlements. The aliens were model refugees, causing no problems and asking for nothing beyond what had already been provided. They kept to themselves but were friendly when approached. "It looks like another diplomatic success," Lisa Park commented as she reviewed the latest reports. "The Federation gains new members and we've helped a species in need." Admiral Morrison nodded, but something nagged at him. In 3 centuries of first contact situations, he had learned to trust his instincts. The Kethmori were too perfect, too grateful, too harmless. In his experience, any species advanced enough to travel between galaxies should have at least some defensive capabilities. But the weeks passed peacefully, and his concerns faded. The Kethmori continued to be model citizens, contributing to Federation science and culture, while building their quiet colonies in the outer systems. None of them knew that the real test was just beginning. 3 months after the Kethmori had settled into their new colonies, Captain Bill Hayes received a message that made his blood run cold. The automated monitoring station orbiting Kepler 442b had stopped transmitting. The world was one of the smaller Kethmori settlements, home to about 50,000 of the crystalline beings. "Could be a simple equipment failure," suggested Lieutenant Amy Stone as she reviewed the data on the Frontiers bridge. "Those monitoring stations are pretty old," but Tony Clark was frowning at his security console. "Captain, I'm not picking up any energy signatures from the planet's surface either. No heat sources, no electromagnetic activity, nothing." Bill felt a chill run down his spine. A colony of 50,000 beings didn't just disappear. "Set course for Kepler 442b, maximum speed, and send a priority message to Admiral Morrison." The journey to the Kethmori colony took 18 hours. As the Frontier dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Bill stared at the main screen in horror. The planet that had been a green paradise just weeks ago was now a dead gray sphere floating in space. "Full sensor sweep," Bill ordered, his voice tight with shock. "I want to know what happened here." Amy worked frantically at the science station, her face growing pale as the readings came in. "Captain, there's no life on the planet. Not just no intelligent life, no life at all. No plants, no bacteria, no organic matter of any kind." "That's impossible," Tony said. "We saw the reports from their last inspection. The planet was covered in forests and gardens." Bill authorized a landing party, though every instinct told him it was dangerous. The shuttle descended through an atmosphere that was now thin and lifeless. When they touched down at what had been the main Kethmori city, they found something that would haunt Bill's dreams for the rest of his life. The beautiful crystalline structures were still there, but they were different somehow. Where before they had pulsed with soft, welcoming light, now they glowed with a harsh, hungry radiance. The ground beneath their feet was not soil but a strange, glassy substance that crunched underfoot. "My God," Amy whispered, kneeling to examine the ground with her scanner. "Captain, this isn't rock or dirt. It's compressed organic matter. Everything that lived on this planet has been processed into this substance." Tony's security scanner was going wild. "I'm reading massive energy concentrations in those crystal structures. Whatever happened here, it required enormous amounts of power." They found no bodies, no signs of struggle, no evidence that the Kethmori had ever been there at all. But Amy's detailed scans revealed the horrible truth. The entire biosphere of the planet had been consumed and converted into the crystalline material that now made up the Kethmori structures. Back on the Frontier, Bill immediately contacted Admiral Morrison. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen, and Bill could see his own horror reflected in Morrison's eyes as he delivered his report. "Admiral, the Kethmori colony is gone. The entire planet has been stripped of life. I think they consumed everything." "That's a serious accusation, Captain," Morrison replied carefully. "Are you certain the Kethmori were responsible?" "Sir, there's evidence that the crystalline structures grew significantly in size since our last survey. They've incorporated the planet's entire biomass into their architecture." Dr. Sam Rodriguez was called in to analyze the data from Kepler 442b. What he discovered in the Keth. Maury's own cultural files made him physically sick. Working late into the night, Sam used his linguistic skills to dig deeper into the alien language than the standard translators could manage. "Admiral, we've made a terrible mistake," Sam reported during an emergency briefing. "The Kethmori aren't refugees. They're predators. Their name doesn't translate to star wanderers like we thought. It means life consumers." Sam pulled up holographic displays showing his translation work. "They don't just eat organic matter. According to their own cultural texts, they consume what they call life essence, the fundamental force that makes something alive. When they feed, they don't just kill their prey. They erase it from existence so completely that it's as if it never lived at all. Amy had been conducting her own research into the Kethmori biology. Her findings were equally disturbing. Admiral, I've been analyzing samples from their crystal structures. They're not made of silicon or carbon compounds. They're made from compressed life force itself. Every one of their beautiful buildings is a tomb containing the essence of billions of consumed beings. Meanwhile, reports began flooding in from other Kethmori colonies. The pattern was always the same. First, the smaller life forms would disappear, then the larger ones, and finally the entire planetary ecosystem would be consumed. The Kethmori would claim it was part of their natural terraforming process, but the reality was far more sinister. Tony Clark had been investigating the security aspects of the Kethmori settlements. What he found in their encrypted communications made him call for an immediate fleet mobilization. "Admiral, I've cracked their communication protocols," Tony reported. "They're not random refugees. This is a coordinated invasion. They've identified every major population center in Federation space, and they're planning to consume them one by one." The most horrifying discovery came when Sam found references to something called the Great Feast in the Kethmori historical records. Using quantum archaeology techniques, he was able to reconstruct fragments of data from civilizations that had encountered the Kethmori in the past. "Sir, they've done this before," Sam said, his voice shaking. "Many times. The Kethmori have consumed entire galaxies, the Andromeda Galaxy, the Whirlpool Galaxy, dozens of others. They travel between galaxies like a plague, consuming every trace of life before moving on. But the worst revelation was yet to come. Amy discovered that the Kethmori had been studying Federation species since their arrival, categorizing them by what they called essence quality. The peaceful androids were considered bland but filling. The scholarly Villani were rich in intellectual flavor. And humanity? The Kethmori files described humans as the perfect final course, complex emotional essence with undertones of ancient violence. To be saved for last, Admiral Morrison convened an emergency session of the Federation Council, but it was too late. Reports were coming in from across Federation space. The Andorian homeworld had gone silent. 3 Villani research stations had stopped responding. The peaceful trade routes that had connected the galaxy for centuries were being cut one by one. Dr. Rodriguez made one final, chilling discovery. The Kethmori had left behind fragments of historical data from their previous conquests, and Sam managed to reconstruct some of it. He found references to a species that had fought back against the Kethmori millions of years ago. "Admiral, there was a species called the Vortak Empire. They were apparently the most militaristic civilization in their galaxy, professional warriors who lived for battle. When the Kethmori came, the Vortak threw everything they had at them. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. What happened to them?" Morrison asked. Sam's face was pale as he delivered the answer. "They lasted 6 hours. The Kethmori consumed their entire civilization in 6 hours. Their final transmission was a warning to any species that might find it. The beautiful ones cannot be fought with conventional weapons. They exist in dimensions beyond our understanding. Only those who understand true destruction might stand a chance." As reports of consumed worlds continued to pour in, Admiral Morrison realized that humanity faced a choice that would define their species forever. They could try to run, abandoning the Federation and the galaxy to save themselves. They could attempt to negotiate, though every attempt at communication with the Kethmori had been met with polite dismissal, or they could remember what they really were beneath 3 centuries of peaceful diplomacy, standing on the bridge of the Harmony, watching the distant stars that were going dark one by one. Admiral Morrison made his decision. He opened a secure channel to every human ship, station, and colony in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Morrison to all human forces. Authorization code, Raven 77 Alpha. Begin implementation of Protocol 0. Protocol 0, the contingency plan that humanity had hoped never to use. The plan that would remind the galaxy why humans had once been the most feared predators on their own world. It was time to show the Kethmori what true hunters looked like." Admiral Jake Morrison stood before the emergency assembly of the Federation Council, but the being who spoke was no longer the patient diplomat the galaxy had known for decades. His voice was cold and precise, like a blade cutting through steel. "Senators, the situation has moved beyond diplomatic solutions," Morrison announced. "The Kethmori have consumed 47 worlds in the past week. They're not interested in negotiation, compromise, or coexistence. They view every living being in this galaxy as food." Ambassador Kate Williams tried one last time to find a peaceful path. "Admiral, surely there must be some way to communicate with them. Every species has needs that can be met through cooperation." Morrison's eyes were hard as flint when he looked at her. "Ambassador, they consumed the Androrian nursery worlds yesterday. 3 billion children, Kate. They ate them alive and turned their life essence into building materials. There is no negotiating with that." Dr. Sam Rodriguez had been working around the clock to understand Kethmori psychology and weaknesses. What he found in the deepest archives of human military history chilled him to the bone. Buried in classified files were weapons and tactics that humanity had sworn never to use again. "Admiral, I've found the Protocol Zero archives," Sam reported. "Some of this material dates back to the War of 2157. Psychological warfare techniques, reality disruption weapons, temporal bombs. We buried this knowledge for good reason." "I know," Morrison replied quietly, "but good reasons don't matter when the alternative is extinction." Captain Bill Hayes had been reassigned to command the newly commissioned UES Retribution, humanity's first true warship in over 2 centuries. As he walked through the ship's corridors, he felt something stirring in his chest that he'd never experienced before. A cold, calculating fury that seemed to burn without heat. "Captain," reported Lieutenant Amy Stone, now serving as the ship's chief science officer, "the weapon systems are online. The reality anchors are functioning within normal parameters, and the temporal displacement cannons are ready for combat deployment." Amy's voice had changed too. The gentle scientist who had marveled at alien biology was gone, replaced by someone who spoke about weapons of mass destruction with clinical detachment. The transformation wasn't just happening to her. It was happening to every human in the fleet. Tony Clark, now Chief of Fleet Security, was coordinating with human intelligence services across the galaxy. What they had discovered about the Kethmori's true nature made their earlier assessment look optimistic. "Sir, we've intercepted Kethmori communications about their next targets," Tony reported. "They're planning something they call the final harvest. They want to consume Earth itself along with every human colony. They consider us the ultimate delicacy." Morrison nodded grimly. The Kethmori had made their intentions clear, and humanity's response would be equally clear. But first he needed to address the Federation species that remained. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of the Federation," Morrison announced over the Galactic Communication Network. "This is Admiral Morrison of the human fleet. We are implementing emergency protocols to deal with the Kethmori threat. We strongly advise all non-human ships to withdraw from the combat zones immediately." The Rigelian ambassador, whose people had been among the first to welcome the Kethmori, spoke up with confusion. "Admiral Morrison, surely the human fleet alone cannot face this threat. Our combined forces should work together." Morrison's response was delivered with the cold certainty of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of. "Senator, your weapons cannot harm the Kethmori. They exist partially outside normal reality, but we have weapons that work in those dimensions. We have experience with total warfare." Dr. Rodriguez had been studying the psychological profiles of human soldiers throughout history. What he found in the archives explained why humanity had been so successful at diplomacy. They understood war better than any other species in the galaxy. "Admiral, I've completed my analysis of human combat psychology," Sam reported during a briefing aboard the Retribution. "When humans engage in warfare, they don't just seek victory. They seek to break their enemy so completely that the idea of resistance becomes impossible." "Explain," Morrison said, though he already knew the answer. "Other species fight for territory, resources, or survival. But when humans truly commit to war, they fight to prove that their enemy was wrong to exist at all. It's not enough to win. They need their enemy to understand that they never had a chance." Amy had been developing weapons specifically designed to target the Kethmori's unique biology. Working with technologies that had been banned for 3 centuries, she created devices that could attack beings existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Captain Hayes, the new quantum disruptors are ready for deployment," Amy reported. "They don't just destroy matter, they unravel the quantum foundations, that allow the Kethmori to exist between dimensions. Captain Hayes reviewed the weapon specifications with the same calm attention he had once given to diplomatic protocols. What about their ability to consume life essence? Can we protect against that? The reality anchors create fields where only normal physics apply, Amy explained. Inside those fields, the Kethmori become vulnerable to conventional attacks. They can't phase between dimensions and they can't consume life force. Meanwhile, Tony Clark was coordinating the deployment of the Ghost Fleet, ships equipped with technology that allowed them to fight in the spaces between realities where the Kethmori retreated when threatened. Admiral, all Ghost ships are reporting ready status, Tony announced. We have 47 vessels equipped with dimensional warfare capabilities. They're standing by for Operation Erasure. Operation Erasure. The name had been chosen deliberately. This wouldn't be a war in any traditional sense. Wars were fought between equals who respected each other's right to exist. This would be an extermination conducted with the clinical efficiency that only humans could achieve. But before the operation could begin, Morrison needed to make one final attempt at communication with the Kethmori. Not because he believed in a peaceful solution, but because he needed them to understand what was about to happen to them. The communication channel opened, and the melodic voice of the Kethmori elder filled the bridge. Small ones, you concern yourselves unnecessarily. The great feast is natural and beautiful. You will understand when your time comes. Morrison's response carried no emotion at all. This is Admiral Morrison of the human fleet. You have consumed Federation worlds and murdered billions of innocent beings. This ends now. The Kethmori's laughter was like crystal bells chiming. Foolish child species. We have consumed galaxies. Your primitive weapons cannot touch us. We exist beyond your understanding of reality. You're right, Morrison replied. You do exist beyond normal reality. That's why we're not going to use normal weapons. He cut the communication and turned to his bridge crew. Every face he saw reflected the same cold determination. 3 centuries of peace had ended, and humanity was remembering what they really were. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. You are authorized to begin Operation Erasure. Show them why we chose peace. Across human space, the transformation was complete. The gentle diplomats had become strategists. The peaceful scientists had become weapons designers. The patient negotiators had become the architects of systematic extinction. The Kethmori had awakened something in humanity that had slept for 300 years. They had reminded humans that beneath their diplomatic exterior lay the most successful predator species their planet had ever produced. And now that predator was no longer pretending to be tame. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching as the human fleet assembled in formation around Earth. 200 warships hung in space like sleeping predators, their hulls black as the void between stars. Each vessel carried weapons that had been theoretical concepts just weeks ago, now made real by human ingenuity driven by absolute necessity. Admiral, all fleet elements report ready status, announced Commander Lisa Park. Her voice carried none of the warmth it had held during the years of peace. Now she spoke with the precision of someone who had accepted that mercy was a luxury they could no longer afford. Morrison opened a channel to the entire human fleet. His message would be heard by every ship, every station, every human settlement across the galaxy. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of 3 centuries of restrained violence finally given purpose. Citizens of Earth and her colonies, children of humanity scattered among the stars, Morrison began. Today we face an enemy that seeks not conquest but extinction. The Kethmori have shown us what they truly are. Not refugees but devourers who have consumed entire galaxies. He paused, looking out at the fleet that represented humanity's return to its true nature. For 300 years we chose peace because we remembered the cost of war. Today we choose war because we remember the value of life. The Kethmori will learn why the galaxy's greatest predator chose to sleep for so long. Captain Bill Hayes commanded the lead assault group, his ship cutting through space toward the largest Kethmori concentration in the Vega system. The crystalline aliens had established a massive feeding complex there, processing the consumed essence of 12 different worlds into their twisted architecture. Captain, the reality anchors are in position, reported Dr. Amy Stone from her post at the science station. The gentle xenobiologist was gone, replaced by someone who designed weapons with the same passion she had once reserved for studying life. The Kethmori dimensional refuges are sealed off. The first phase of Operation Erasure began with surgical precision. Human ships deployed reality anchor fields around every Kethmori position, trapping the aliens in normal space where their interdimensional abilities couldn't protect them. The beautiful crystalline beings found themselves suddenly vulnerable to conventional physics. "They're trying to phase shift," Tony Clark reported from his security station. "The reality anchors are holding. They can't escape into their dimensional havens." The Kethmori's response was immediate and terrifying. Their ships began to glow with malevolent energy as they tried to consume the life force of nearby human crews. But the humans had prepared for this too. "Life essence shielding is holding," Amy reported with clinical satisfaction. "Their feeding ability is completely neutralized within the anchor fields." For the first time in millions of years of cosmic predation, the Kethmori faced an enemy that understood them completely. An enemy that had studied their weaknesses and developed specific countermeasures for every aspect of their supernatural abilities. The second phase began when the Ghost Fleet emerged from dimensional space behind the Kethmori positions. These specially modified ships could fight in the spaces between realities where the Kethmori had previously been untouchable. Dr. Sam Rodriguez coordinated the psychological warfare campaign from the command ship. Having studied the Kethmori's own cultural files, he knew exactly how to break their collective consciousness. "Broadcasting on all Kethmori frequencies," Sam announced. "We're transmitting the complete historical record of their atrocities, combined with quantum resonance patterns that disrupt their group mind. They're experiencing the terror of every species they've consumed simultaneously." The effect was immediate. Across the galaxy, Kethmori positions began broadcasting distress signals as their collective consciousness collapsed under the weight of their victims' memories. For beings who had never felt fear, the experience was devastating. But Morrison wasn't interested in their surrender. This wasn't a war to be won, it was a threat to be eliminated completely. "Phase 3, all ships," Morrison commanded. "Begin temporal bombardment." The human fleet unleashed weapons that attacked the Kethmori across time itself. Temporal bombs unraveled their past, preventing them from ever arriving in Federation space. Causality disruptors severed their connection to the future, trapping them in an eternal present of destruction. Amy watched her instruments as the Kethmori ships began to flicker out of existence. "Admiral, the temporal weapons are working. They're being erased from the timeline itself." But even this wasn't enough for humanity's methodical approach to extinction. The final phase of Operation Erasure was the most terrifying of all. "Deploy the existence scrubbers," Morrison ordered. These weapons went beyond killing or even erasing. They attacked the fundamental quantum signatures that allowed the Kethmori to exist at all. Every atom that had ever been part of their crystalline forms was systematically unraveled from reality. Captain Hayes watched as the massive Kethmori feeding complex in the Vega system simply stopped being. Not destroyed, not reduced to rubble, but completely removed from existence as if it had never been built. "My God," whispered one of the younger officers. "What have we become?" Morrison heard the comment and responded with the quiet certainty of someone who had made peace with necessity. "We became what we needed to become. The universe has predators, Lieutenant. Sometimes it needs a bigger predator to keep them in check." The battle lasted exactly 72 hours. When it ended, there was no trace that the Kethmori had ever existed. Their ships were gone, their colonies were empty space. Their very presence had been scrubbed from the quantum foundations of reality. The consumed worlds remained dead. Their life essence had been destroyed beyond any hope of recovery. But the threat was over, ended so completely that only humans retained any memory of the beautiful crystalline beings who had nearly devoured the galaxy. Ambassador Kate Williams stood in the council chambers, addressing the surviving Federation representatives. The other species looked at her with a mixture of awe and terror that hadn't been there before. "The threat has been neutralized," Kate announced, her diplomatic training allowing her to maintain composure despite what she had witnessed. "Humanity has eliminated the Kethmori completely." The Regelian senator, whose people had survived the assault only because human forces had protected them, asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Ambassador Williams, how did humanity develop such weapons so quickly?" Kate's answer was delivered with the same calm precision that had once negotiated peace treaties. "We didn't develop them, Senator. We've had them for centuries. We simply chose not to use them." The implications of her words settled over the council like a dark cloud. Every species in the Federation suddenly understood that humanity's peaceful diplomacy hadn't come from weakness or idealism. It had come from the restraint of beings who understood exactly what total warfare meant. Dr. Rodriguez submitted his final report on the Kethmori incident to the Galactic Archives. His conclusions would reshape how every species in the galaxy viewed humanity. The Kethmori were not the first species to threaten galactic civilization, Sam wrote. According to our historical analysis, similar threats have emerged approximately every 50,000 years. Each time they have been stopped by the same force, humanity's ancestors, using weapons and tactics that we have carried with us since we first reached the stars. Humanity's greatest achievement was not learning to make peace. It was learning to make war so efficiently that nothing in the universe can stand against us when we choose to fight. The galaxy remains safe not because there are no monsters, but because there is something more dangerous than monsters watching over it. Admiral Morrison stood alone on the observation deck of the Retribution, looking out at the stars that were no longer going dark. The human fleet was returning to Earth, their mission complete. In a few weeks, they would return to their roles as diplomats, scientists, and peacekeepers, but the galaxy would never look at them the same way again. Commander Park approached, her expression thoughtful. "Admiral, do you think we did the right thing?" Morrison considered the question seriously. 47 worlds had been consumed before they acted. Billions of beings had died because humanity had tried diplomacy first. But he also knew that the weapons they had used could never be put back in the box. "We did what was necessary, Lisa," he said finally. "The galaxy asked us to put away our weapons, we agreed. But some lessons can only be taught in the language of absolute destruction." As the human ships jumped to hyperspace, heading home to worlds where children would sleep safely in their beds, Morrison made a final log entry. Personal log, Admiral Jake Morrison. The Kethmori incident is concluded. All threats have been neutralized. Humanity returns to its role as peacekeepers of the galaxy. He paused, then added the words that would define humanity's relationship with the cosmos for generations to come. "We choose peace not because we are weak, but because we are strong. We choose mercy not because we must, but because we can. And we will continue to choose these things as long as the galaxy remembers why we are qualified to make that choice." The stars remained bright, and the galaxy slept peacefully under the